Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. You're listening to Classics Made Clear, classic texts translated with accuracy and accessibility for today's listener. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share these videos with your friends. After the siege and attack on Troy finally ended, the city was smashed apart and burned down to embers and ash. The man who planned the treacherous tricks there was judged for his betrayal, even though he had once seemed the truest man on earth. It was the noble Aeneas and his high-born family who later conquered new lands and became rulers over nearly all the wealth in the Western Islands. From mighty Romulus, who quickly grew rich in Rome, with great pride he built up that city first and gave it his own name, the name it still has. Titius went to Tuscany and began to build and settle it. The Langobards in Lombardy raised up homes there, and far across the French Sea, Felix Brutus set Britain on many broad hills with joy, a land of war and wonder, where battle, destruction, and strange marvels have often taken place, and where joy and disaster have taken turns very quickly ever since. And when Britain had been built by that rich man, brave men increased in the land, men who loved conflict, who caused trouble in many changing times. More marvels have happened on this earth here than in any other place I know of since that time. But of all the kings who ever ruled Britain, Arthur was always the most noble and courteous, as I have heard told. So I plan to show you a story on this earth, one that some people consider a remarkable sight, an extraordinary and wild adventure from among Arthur's wonders. If you will listen to this story for just a little while, I will tell it at once, just as I heard it told in town, word for word, as it was written and fixed down in a strong, sturdy story, locked in faithful letters, kept in the land for a very long time. King Arthur was staying at Camelot for Christmas, with many noble lords, men of the highest rank, including all the famous brothers of the Round Table. There were grand and carefree celebrations. Many men competed in tournaments at different times. These noble knights jousted with great joy and then returned to the court to dance and sing. The feast lasted exactly 15 days, with all the food and fun people could imagine. Such shining music was glorious to hear. Great noise in the daytime, dancing at night. Everything was joyful and high-spirited in halls and rooms alike, with lords and ladies enjoying themselves. All the best people in the world stayed there together, the bravest knights under Christ himself, and the most lovely ladies who ever lived. And Arthur was the most handsome king who ever led a court. All this fair company was in its youth, the happiest people under heaven, their king the highest in courage. You would now find it hard to name such a bold group living on any hill today. The new year was so fresh and lively, coming in so quickly, that on that day the people at the high table were served double portions. When the king came into the hall with his knights, the singing from the chapel finally came to an end. There was loud shouting from clerks and others. "Noel!" cried out newly and named again and again. Then noblemen rushed forward to offer and receive New Year's gifts. Year-end presents were lifted up high, and they paid each other in turn. They argued busily over the gifts. Ladies laughed loudly even though they had lost, and the winner was never angry. You can trust that. They made all this joy until mealtime. When they had washed, they went properly to their seats, the highest-ranking man always sitting at the head. As was fitting. Queen Guinevere appeared very brightly dressed, sitting in the middle of the high dais, surrounded with decorations. Fine silk hung beside her, and a canopy above her made of choice cloth from Toulouse, with plenty of rich tapestries from Tars, embroidered and decorated with the best jewels, the kind you'd pay a great price to buy. A lady fairer in appearance, with shining grey eyes, no man could truthfully say he had ever seen. But Arthur would not eat until everyone else had been served. He was so joyful and full of high spirits, almost childlike at times. He enjoyed life so freely that he disliked either lying still too long or sitting too long. His young blood and wild mind made him restless. But another reason also moved him, because of a noble custom he had taken up. He would never eat on such a great day until something adventurous had happened to him, some unusual story, some great marvel he could believe, about ancestors, or battles, or other adventures. Or unless some man asked him for a test of courage, to join him in a jousting match and risk danger, one life against another, each trusting himself, as fortune would allow one of them to win the honor. This was the king's custom wherever he held court, at every splendid feast among his noble company. Therefore, with such a bold and noble look, he sat firm in his seat, very eager in that new year, making much joy with everyone. So there the strong king himself sat in his seat, talking politely before the high table about pleasant matters. Good Gawain was seated there, with Queen Guinevere beside him. Agravain the hard-to-please sat on the other side, both of them the king's sister's sons, and very loyal knights. Bishop Baldwin sat above them at the head of the table, and Ewain, son of Urien, ate with him. These men sat on the dais and were served with honor, and many loyal knights sat at the side tables. Then the first course came in with the blasting of trumpets, with many bright banners hanging above, new drumbeats sounding with noble pipes, wild melodies and sharp music waking the air, so that many hearts rose high at the stirring notes. Fine delicacies came with it, very expensive foods, plenty of fresh dishes, so many in number that it was hard for the servants to find room to set down the silver trays, holding different sauces and meats. Each man, as he pleased, took what he liked without hesitation. Every 2 men shared 12 dishes, with good beer and bright wine for both. Now I will say no more about their serving of food, for everyone can easily imagine there was no lack of anything there. Hardly had the first course begun when a completely new sound came suddenly near, so startling that people almost forgot to take their food, for the noise had barely died down, and the first course was just being properly served, when a fearsome man strode into the hall doorway, the tallest man anyone had ever seen on earth. From his neck to his waist he was huge and thick, and his limbs were so long and big that I think he must have been half a giant. But even so, I must call him a man, and in truth, the most handsome giant-sized man who could ever ride. His back and chest were broad and powerful, but his stomach and waist were impressively slim, and all his features matched one another in perfect form, clean and well-shaped. People stared in wonder at his color, for it was plain to see. He behaved like a bold warrior, and he was entirely bright green. This man and all his clothing were dressed in green. He wore a tight-fitting coat that clung to his sides, and over it a fine mantle lined richly within, trimmed openly with pure fur at the edges, bright with white fur, and his hood also, which was pulled back from his long hair and laid across his shoulders. His hem was neatly finished, and his hose were the same green, fastened tightly at his calves, and he wore clean, polished spurs underneath. Spurs of bright gold on richly bordered silk straps, and plates of metal beneath his ankles, where a rider rests. All of his clothing was truly bright green, even the buckles of his belt and the other shining stones that were richly arranged on his outfit. All around him and around his saddle were decorations of silk work, too many to tell the half of, embroidered above with birds and insects, with cheerful designs in green, and gold always in the middle. The pendants of his breast strap, the proud crupper strap, the metal ornaments, all were coated with green enamel. The stirrups he stood on were stained the same green, and his saddle ornaments also, and the fine studs. Everything glimmered and shone with green jewels. The horse he rode was the same color, a great, thick, powerful green horse, a strong steed to control, wearing a richly decorated bridle, and the knight sat on it gladly. This knight was dressed very splendidly in green, and the hair of his head was the same color as that of his horse. His long, flowing hair fell in folds around his shoulders. A huge beard like a thick bush hung over his chest, and together with the long hair from his head, it spread out around him, curling down past his elbows, so that half his arms were hidden beneath it, like the cloak of a king that wraps around his neck. The horse's mane looked very similar to his own hair, well curled and combed with many knots, twisted together with gold threads worked into the green. Each tuft of hair alternated, one of green, one of gold. The horse's tail and the forelock on its head matched in style. Both were tied with a bright green band, decorated with expensive stones along the length of the tail. Then the hair was wrapped with a cord into a knot tied high up, and many bright bells of shining gold jingled from it. Never before had such a horse, or such a rider, been seen in that hall by anyone's eyes. He looked as bright as lightning, as everyone who saw him said. It seemed that no man on earth could withstand a blow from his mighty strikes. The knight carried no helmet and no chain-mail armor, nor any gorget, nor any plate armor suited for war. He had no spear or shield to block or strike with. Instead, in one hand he held a holly branch, the greenest thing that grows when the woods are bare, and in his other hand he held a massive axe, huge and extraordinary, hard even to describe in words. The head of the axe was a full yard long, made of green steel mixed with gold. The blade shone bright, with a broad edge as perfectly shaped for cutting as a sharp razor. The strong man gripped the steel handle, which was wrapped with iron down to the end, and carved all over with green designs in fine, graceful patterns. A strap was wrapped around it, tied near the head, and then twisted often down the handle, decorated with many well-made tassels attached with bright green buttons. Thus dressed and armed, the Green Knight entered the hall, riding straight toward the high dais, showing no fear at all. He saluted no one, but looked boldly over everyone. The first words he spoke were, "Where is the ruler of this company? I would gladly see that man face to face and speak with him directly." He cast his eyes over the knights and looked them up and down, studying carefully to see who among them had the greatest fame. Everyone stared at length, looking at the strange man, for each person wondered what it could mean that a man and a horse could have such a color, green as fresh grass, and even greener still, brighter than green enamel glowing on gold. All who stood there studied him and stepped nearer, full of amazement, wanting to know what he would do. They had seen many strange sights before, but never anything like this. For this reason, the people in the hall thought he must be some phantom or fairy being. So many noble men were afraid to answer him, and everyone sat stunned into silence. A deep hush fell across the rich hall, as if every person there had suddenly fallen asleep. I think it was not all from fear. Some of it was courtesy, for they waited to let the one who should speak for all give an answer to the strange knight. Then Arthur, sitting before the high dais, watched this adventure unfold. He politely bowed to the visitor, for Arthur was never afraid, and said, "Sir, you are welcome indeed to this place. I am Arthur, the head of this household. Please step down and stay a while, I pray you. Whatever your wishes, we shall learn it soon." The knight answered, "No, as God who sits on high helps me, to stay even a moment in this hall is not my purpose. I came because your fame has risen so high. You, your court, and your knights are said to be the strongest under steel armor, the bravest and worthiest in all the world. And I want to test such a man in a friendly challenge. And I have heard that courtesy is practiced here, which has truly drawn me to this place at this time. You may be sure, from this branch I carry, that I come here in peace seeking no trouble. For if I had come to fight, I have at home a coat of mail, a helmet, a shield, and a bright shining spear, and many other weapons besides. But since I want no war, my clothing is softer. But if you are as bold as all men say, then grant me kindly the game I ask for, if it is right to do so." Arthur answered him at once, "Sir courteous knight, if you seek open combat, you shall not fail to find a fighter here." "No, I'm not asking for a fight, truly I tell you," said the knight. "There are beardless children sitting around on these benches. If I were wearing full armor on a tall war horse, there is no man here strong enough to match me. Your strength is far too weak, so instead I ask for a Christmas game in this court, for it is Yuletide and New Year, and many brave men are here. If anyone in this house thinks himself bold enough, has courage in his blood and bravery in his head to strike one blow for another, I will give him this rich battle-axe. This axe, heavy enough and sturdy for anyone to handle, shall be his, and I will stand still and take the first blow just as I sit here. If any man is fierce enough to try what I ask, let him step lightly up to me and take this weapon. I quit-claim it forever. He may keep it as his own, but in return I will give him a blow. I will stand and strike him back, here on this floor, unless he chooses to assign someone else to receive the return stroke instead, and I will give him a full year and a day before he must take his turn. Now hurry, and let us quickly see whether anyone here dares to speak." If he had stunned them before, now every man in the hall, high and low, fell silent. The knight shifted on his horse, moved himself in the saddle, and rolled his bright red eyes around roughly, bending his bristling green brows, shaking his beard as he waited for someone to rise, and when no one answered him, he cleared his throat loudly and began to speak again. "What? Is this Arthur's house?" said the knight, "the one whose fame runs through so many kingdoms? Where now is your pride, your victories, your fierce daring, and your great boasts? Now the revelry and renown of the Round Table is overturned with only one man's speech, for all of you sit here in fear, without showing even a single blow." With this he laughed so loudly that the Lord Arthur was angered. Blood rushed into Arthur's face with shame. He grew as angry as a stormy wind, and so did everyone else there. The king, bold by nature, stepped forward near the knight, and Arthur said, "Knight, by heaven, your request is foolish, and since you have asked so boldly, your wish shall be granted. I know no man here who is afraid of your loud boasting. Give me your axe, in God's name, and I shall grant the request you have made." Arthur quickly leaped toward him and took the axe, and the other knight stepped down fiercely on foot. Now Arthur held the axe, gripping the handle, and he swung it strongly around, ready to strike with it. The Green Knight stood tall before him, taller in the head and shoulders than anyone in the hall. With a stern look he stroked his beard, and with a calm, dry expression he pulled down his coat, baring his neck, showing no more concern for the coming blow than if someone had just offered him a drink of wine. Then Sir Gawain, who sat beside the queen, leaned toward Arthur and said, "I beg you, with your gracious permission, let this contest be mine." "Would you allow me, noble lord," said Gawain to the king, "to rise from this bench and stand by you there, so that I may step away from this table without dishonor, and so that my lady," he meant the queen, "would not be displeased with me? I wish to come into your council before this great court, for it seems to me improper, and everyone knows it is true, that such a request should be raised so high in your hall, and that you yourself, though willing, should take it upon yourself, while so many bold men sit around you on the benches, men who, I believe, have no equals under heaven in courage or in battle. I am the weakest, I know, and least intelligent, and my life would be the smallest loss, if the truth be told. But since you are my uncle, whatever honor I have comes only from your blood in me, And since this adventure is so foolish that it should not fall to you, and since I asked you first for the chance, let it fall to me. And if I speak clumsily, let all this rich court excuse me from blame." The nobles whispered together, and then gave the same advice, to free the king from the burden and allow Gawain to take the game. Then the king commanded Gawain to rise, and Gawain quickly stood up and respectfully approached. He knelt before the king, received the weapon, and Arthur graciously gave it to him, lifting his hand to bless him and telling him to keep both heart and hand strong. "Guard yourself, cousin," said the king, "and when you strike your blow, strike truly. And if you hit him right, I believe you will be able to endure the return blow he will give after." Gawain went toward the Green Knight with the axe in hand and stood boldly before him, showing no fear. Then the Green Knight spoke to Sir Gawain. "Let us agree on our terms before we go further. First, I ask you, knight, tell me truthfully your name, so I may trust you." "In God's faith," said Gawain, "my name is Gawain. I offer you this blow, whatever may follow afterward, and in a year and a day I will take another from you, with whatever weapon you choose, and no one else shall take my place." "By God," said the Green Knight, "Sir Gawain, it delights me that I shall receive from your fist the blow I asked. And you have repeated fully and truly all the agreement I asked of the king, except that you must now promise me, on your word of honor, that you yourself will seek me out, wherever you believe I can be found in this world, and receive from me the return blow, just as you give me one today before these noble people." "Where shall I seek you?" asked Gawain. "Where is your home? I do not know where you live, nor your court, nor even your name. Tell me truly your name and your dwelling place, and I will use all my wit to find my way there, and I swear that to you on my good faith." "That is enough for this new year," said the Green Knight to noble Gawain. "If you strike me cleanly, then I will tell you my home and name. When you have smitten me properly, I will teach you clearly about my house and my dwelling. If I speak nothing afterward, then all the better for you may stay in your land and search no farther. Now take your grim tool, and let us see how you strike." "Gladly, sir, truly," said Gawain, stroking the axe. The Green Knight prepared himself on the ground. He bent a little with his head, laying his long, handsome hair back over his crown, so that his bare neck was fully exposed. Gawain gripped the axe and lifted it high. He set his left foot firmly forward on the floor and let the axe fall straight and hard on the bare neck. The sharp blade split the bones, cut through the fat and flesh, and sliced the neck in two so that the steel edge struck the ground. The fair head fell from the neck onto the floor, where many kicked it aside with their feet as it rolled. Blood spurted from the body and shone bright on the green floor. Yet the knight did not falter or fall, nor weaken at all. He strode forward boldly on his strong legs, rushed through the hall where men stood amazed, snatched up his lovely head and lifted it at once. Then he stepped to his horse, seized the bridle, and climbed into the saddle, holding his head by the hair in his hand. He sat in the saddle as calmly as if nothing unlucky had happened to him, though he was headless. He turned his huge, bleeding body around, and many men trembled at the sight. The Green Knight held his head steadily in his hand. He turned the face toward the nobles on the high dais, and the head lifted its eyelids and stared wide. Then the lips moved and spoke, as you will hear now. "Look, Gawain, be ready to go as you have promised. Seek faithfully until you find me, just as you agreed in this hall before all these knights. Go to the Green Chapel. I command you to find it. The blow you have given deserves a return blow, and you must come there to receive it properly repaid on New Year's morning. Many men know me as the Knight of the Green Chapel, so if you try to find me, you will never fail. Therefore come, or you will be called a coward." With a fierce pull he turned the reins, rode out through the hall door, holding his head in his hand. Sparks flew from the floor as the horse hooves struck the stone. No one there knew to what country he went, nor from what place he had first come. What then? The king and Gawain laughed and smiled at that green stranger. Yet all could see plainly it was a marvel beyond all other marvels. Though Arthur, the courteous king, felt great wonder in his heart, he showed no sign of fear. Instead, he spoke loudly to the queen with gentle courtesy. "Dear lady, be not troubled today. Such marvels are fitting for Christmas time, plays and entertainments made for laughter and singing, mixed among the natural songs and dances of knights and ladies. Still, I may now go to my meal, for I have seen a wonder I will not forget." He glanced toward Sir Gawain and said cheerfully, "Now, sir, hang up your axe. It has chopped enough for now." And the axe was hung above the dais on the hangings, where all could look at it with amazement and remember the marvel truly. Then the king and his knights went together to the feast. They sat at the table, Arthur and Gawain, and noble men served them double portions of all the finest foods, with every kind of dish and plenty of music. They passed that day in gladness until it reached its end. But now take care, Sir Gawain. Do not shrink from the danger, for you must seek out the adventure you have taken in hand. Arthur had received this strange adventure as a New Year's gift. Just the kind of tale he loved to hear. Though he often lacked stories during the feast, now they all had their hands full with real, serious business. Gawain was glad to begin such a game in the hall, but though the ending would be heavy, do not be surprised. For even when men are merry with strong drink, a year runs quickly and never returns the same. The beginning and the end rarely match each other. So Christmas passed, and the next year came, and each season followed after the other in its turn. After Christmas came the hard, strict season of Lent, which tests a man's flesh with fish and simpler food. But then the weather of the world fought against winter. The cold cleared away, the clouds lifted, April rains fell warm on the plains, flowers sprang up everywhere. The fields and forests put on green clothing again, birds prepared their nests and sang joyfully for the pleasure of the soft summer coming after. Blossoms swelled and bloomed in rows rich and heavy, and beautiful melodies were heard in the proud woods. After the season of summer with its soft winds, when Zephyrus breathes over seeds and herbs, the plants grow in abundance, and the damp dew drips from leaves, awaiting the warm glance of the bright sun. But harvest soon arrives and hardens quickly, warning the world that winter approaches. Dry winds lift dust high into the air. Stormy winds wrestle with the sun. Leaves fall from the trees and lie on the ground. The grass that was green grows grey. Everything ripens and rots that once rose in spring. Thus the year turns through many yesterdays, and winter winds back again, as the world requires, until the month of Michaelmas brings winter's wages. Then Sir Gawain soon remembers his dreadful journey. Still, he stayed with Arthur until All Hallows Day, and the king made a fine feast for Gawain's sake, full of celebration among the round table. Knights courteous and ladies beautiful were all gathered for love of Gawain, for they longed for him, yet they tried only to show mirth, and made many joys to lighten the thoughts of the dangerous vow he had made. After the meal, Gawain spoke sadly to his uncle about his journey, and boldly said, "Now, my lord and kinsman, I ask leave of you. You know the meaning of this matter. I need not speak of its troubles except briefly, but I must set out early tomorrow to seek the Green Knight, as God guides me." Then the best men of the court gathered together, Ewain and Eric, and many others. Sir Dodinowell of Sauvage, the Duke of Clarence, Lancelot, Lionel, Lucan the Good, Sir Bors, Sir Bedivere, strong knights both, and many other honourable men, including Mador de la Porte. All these nobles came nearer to the king to advise and comfort Gawain, heavy-hearted. There was deep sorrow in the hall that such a worthy knight as Gawain must depart on that errand, to face a deadly blow and strike no blow in return. But Gawain kept a cheerful face and said, "Why should I hesitate before hard and destined things? What can a man do but try?" He stayed there all that day, and early the next morning he asked for his armour, and it was all brought to him. First, a thick, fine carpet was spread tightly over the floor, and much glittering gold gear shone brightly above it. The strong knight stepped onto it and handled the steel pieces. He was dressed first in a doublet of rich Tarsic silk, and then in a well-made hooded coat lined inside with bright white fur. Then they set the steel shoes, the sabatons, on his feet, and wrapped his legs in steel greaves, beautifully shaped, with polished knee-pieces attached cleanly, and golden knots fastening them around his knees. Fine cuisses were then fitted to his thighs, closely strapped around his thick, strong legs. After that they put on the coat of chainmail, the beautifully woven byrnie of bright steel rings, draped over fine padding beneath. Then came his well-burnished arm braces, elbow guards bright and smooth, and steel-plated gloves. All the noble gear he needed at that time. Over all this they placed his coat of arms. Then they fastened on his golden spurs with pride, and belted his sword at his side with a silken girdle. When he was fully fastened into his armour, he shone richly. Even the smallest buckle or loop gleamed with gold. Dressed in his harness, he heard mass, offered his prayers, and honoured the high altar. Afterward, he came to the king and the courtly lords, took his loving leave from nobles and ladies, and they kissed him and blessed him and commended him to Christ. By then his horse Gringolet was ready, saddled and decorated with golden fringes, freshly nailed and adorned for this adventure. The bridle was banded with bright gold, the breast strap, the proud saddle cloths, the crupper and the covering, all matched the saddle. Everything was set with red gold nails, so that the whole harness gleamed like the shining of the sun. Then Sir Gawain took up his helmet and kissed it. It was firmly strapped and well padded. It rose high on his head, fastened at the back, with a light iron buckle over the visor, embroidered and edged with the finest gems. The silk borders were broad, painted like parrots, decorated with doves and true love knots so thickly it seemed many ladies had worked 7 years on it. The band around the top of the helmet that encircled his head was set with diamonds, bright and brown golden stones of great worth. Then they showed him his shield, bright red in colour, painted with a pentangle of pure gold. He swung it by its strap and placed it around his neck, and it suited him handsomely. Why the pentangle belonged to that noble prince I will tell you, though it may take a moment. It is a symbol Solomon once devised as a token of truth, for such is its meaning. It is a figure with 5 points, and each line is interwoven with the next. And everywhere it is endless. In English it is called the endless knot. Therefore it belonged well to this knight, and to his shining armour. For Gawain was known as faithful in 5 things, and 5 times over in different ways. He was known as a good man, as pure as refined gold, free of every fault, and adorned with virtue. Thus the new pentangle he bore on shield and tunic, for he was the truest man in speech and the most courteous knight in conduct. First, he was found faultless in his 5 senses, and second, the knight never failed in the use of his 5 fingers. His entire trust on earth was placed in the 5 wounds that Christ received on the cross, as the Creed teaches. And whenever this knight found himself in battle, his thoughts always turned to those wounds above all else. All his strength also came from remembering the 5 joys that the gracious Queen of Heaven had in her child. For this reason, The knight had the image of the Virgin painted on the inside of his shield, so that whenever he looked at it, his courage never faltered. The first 5 virtues I find the knight used were generosity and fellowship above all things. His purity and courtesy never failed him. And pity, which surpasses all virtues. These pure 5 virtues were more firmly fixed in that noble knight than in any other man. All these 5 groups of 5 virtues were fastened together in him, each linked into the next with no end, fixed upon the 5 points that never fail, nor separate, nor break apart. Wherever the figure begins or ends, it is the same everywhere. Therefore the endless knot was shaped upon his shining shield, all done in red gold on red background, the pure pentangle, as people call it. Now Gawain was fully prepared. He took up his lance at once and wished them all good day, for he meant to leave forever. He spurred his horse sharply and rode swiftly away, striking sparks from the stones. All who saw that noble knight sighed in their hearts and spoke the truth to one another, sorrowing for that comely man. By Christ, it is a shame that you, noble sir, will be lost. No equal to you can be found upon the earth. A wiser choice would have been to arrange affairs differently, and let this excellent man rise to be a duke, a glorious leader of people in the land. It would have been far better than to let him be destroyed by some devilish, elvish man because of a reckless Christmas game. What king ever took such counsel, to risk knights in Christmas contests? Many tears fell that day as the noble lord rode from those halls. He made no delay, but went swiftly on his way. Through many wild and lonesome paths he rode, as the story tells. Now the knight rides through the realm of Logres, Sir Gawain in God's keeping, though he felt little joy. He often slept alone at night, finding no comfort along the way. He had no companion except his horse, riding through woods and hills, and no one to talk to except God. He came near to North Wales. He kept Anglesey to his left, and crossed the fords by the headlands. From Holyhead he passed into Wirral, a wild region where few people lived who loved either God or man. And everywhere he went, he asked the men he met whether they had heard any news of a Green Knight or of the Green Chapel. All answered him, no, for none had ever seen such a man of that strange green colour. The knight took many strange paths along rough and lonely hills. His expression often changed with worry before ever he found the chapel. He climbed over many cliffs in strange lands, travelling far from his friends, riding like a stranger. At every ford or stream he crossed, a foe seemed to appear before him, so often that it was hardly surprising, and each enemy was so foul and fierce that he had to fight. So many marvels came upon that night that it would be too much to tell even a 10th part. Sometimes he fought serpents, and sometimes wolves. Sometimes he battled with wild men of the woods who lived among the crags. Sometimes he fought bulls and bears and wild boars. Sometimes giants attacked him from the high hills. Had he not been brave and strong, and had he not served God faithfully, surely he would have died many times. War troubled him less than the harsh winter that came. Cold water fell from the clouds and froze before it reached the ground. He was nearly killed by sleet as he slept in his armour, spending more nights than he could count on bare rocks, where icy streams clattered down from the peaks and long icicles hung overhead. Thus, in danger, pain, and hardship, the knight travelled alone until Christmas Eve. At that time, he prayed earnestly to the Virgin Mary to guide him to some shelter. On the morning of Christmas Eve, he rode cheerfully forward into a forest so deep that it was astonishingly wild. High hills rose on either side, and dense woods lay beneath. There stood ancient oaks, 100 together, their trunks huge and grey. Hazel and hawthorn were braided thickly with ragged moss everywhere. Many sad birds perched on bare branches and piped pitifully from the cold. Sir Gawain on Gringole passed beneath them through many swamps and marshes, all alone, worrying he would not arrive in time to honor the birth of Christ, born of the Virgin to save us from sorrow. Sighing, he said, "I beg you, Lord, and Mary, sweetest mother, grant me some lodging where I may hear Mass and morning prayers tomorrow. I pray my Pater Noster, my Ave, and my Creed earnestly." He rode on in prayer, crying out for forgiveness, blessing himself and saying, "Cross of Christ, speed me." He had scarcely blessed himself 3 times when he became aware, in the wood, of a dwelling on a hill. Above a clearing, on a mound, hidden among branches and surrounded by many huge trunks, there stood a castle, the most beautiful that any knight had ever owned. It sat on a slope, a great park around it, with a sharply pointed palisade, closely set, enclosing more trees than 2 miles around. The knight saw it from one side shining and gleaming through the bright oaks. Then he lifted off his helmet politely, and gave thanks to Jesus and Saint Julian, both gracious saints, for showing him such courtesy and hearing his prayer. "A fine lodging indeed," said the knight. "I thank you again." Then he urged Gringolet forward with his gilded heels and rode directly toward the main gate, which brought him straight to the bridge. But the drawbridge was raised high, the gates were shut fast, and the walls were stout and well built, uncaring of any wind's blast. The knight waited on the bank, sitting on his horse, looking across the deep double moat that surrounded the place. The wall rose out of the water, wonderfully deep, and above it stood a huge height of stone, hewn and fitted up to the battlements, all perfectly shaped. Bright watchtowers stood between the battlements, with many lovely openings cleanly carved. Never had the knight seen a finer outer fortification. Inside, he saw the great hall rising high, with tall round towers set thick together. Their carved capitals were beautifully made, and white chimneys gleamed upon the roofs of the towers, shining pure white. So many painted pinnacles stood there, clustered among the battlements, that the whole castle looked almost like a palace cut from paper. The knight thought it very fair if only he might gain entry into the courtyard and take lodging in that house while the holiday lasted. So he called out, and soon a cheerful porter appeared on the wall, asking the knight's business. "Good sir," said Gawain, "would you go and ask the high lord of this house for lodging for me?" "Yes, by St. Peter," said the porter, "and surely I believe you are welcome to stay here as long as you like." Then the porter went back inside at once, and many people came out freely to receive the knight. They lowered the drawbridge and came out eagerly, kneeling on the cold earth to welcome that knight as they thought him worthy. They opened the wide gate for him, and Gawain thanked them courteously, and rode over the bridge. Men took hold of his saddle as he dismounted, and strong servants led his horse to the stables. Knights and squires came down to bring the knight into the hall. When he lifted off his helmet, many hurried forward to take it from his hand and to serve him with honor. They took his sword and his shield as well. He greeted them all graciously, and many proud men pressed forward to show honor to the noble guest. They led him into the hall, where a bright fire burned fiercely on the floor. Then the lord of the castle came down from his chamber to meet Gawain with honor. He said, "You are welcome here. Everything we have is yours to enjoy and command as you will." "Great thanks," said Gawain, "and may Christ reward you." The two embraced as joyful men. Gawain looked closely at the man who greeted him so warmly. He seemed a bold, powerful knight, a large, strong man and somewhat advanced in age. His beard was broad and bright, brown like a beaver's fur. His body was sturdy, his legs strong, his face fierce as fire, and his speech frank and free. Gawain thought him well suited to rule over a company of loyal men. The lord led Gawain to a chamber and ordered a servant to wait upon him properly. Many attendants came at once and brought him to a bright room with noble bedding, curtains of pure silk with gold-trimmed edges, fine embroidered covers of white fur, and rich hangings on rope borders with red gold rings. Tapestries of silk and tarsic cloth covered the walls and lined the floor. There they removed Gawain's armour with cheerful conversation, lifting off his chain-mail and bright garments. Then they brought rich robes for him to choose from. As soon as he chose and put them on, they fit him gracefully, with flowing skirts, and his appearance, face and figure, seemed almost perfect. All agreed no nobler knight had Christ ever created. Wherever he might have gone in the world, he looked as though he could have been a prince without equal on any battlefield where brave men fight. A chair was placed for Sir Gawain before the fireplace, where charcoal burned steadily. It was neatly covered with cloth cushions, and then a fine mantle of rich brown cloth, beautifully embroidered and lined with the best fur, all ermine, was laid over him. His hood was of the same material. He sat in that splendid seat, warming himself thoroughly, and soon his expression brightened. A table was then set up before him, covered with a clean white cloth. There were napkins, salt cellar, silver spoons. The knight washed when he wished, and went to his meal. Servants waited on him with dignity, bringing him many dishes, all seasoned and prepared in the finest way. There were many kinds of fish, some baked in pastry, some roasted over coals, some boiled in broth and flavoured with spices, and swords so skilfully made that the knight enjoyed them all. He called it a splendid feast, thanking everyone as the nobleman encouraged him. "Take this simple meal now. It will be even better later." The knight made much merry, for the wine warmed his head. Then he was carefully questioned by the lord of the castle, who asked politely about Gawain's identity. Gawain courteously admitted that he belonged to King Arthur's court, Arthur, the noble ruler of the Round Table, and that he, Gawain, had come here for Christmas as chance had led him. When the lord learned that it was truly Gawain he had welcomed, he laughed aloud with joy, thinking himself truly blessed. Everyone in the hall rejoiced greatly at the chance to appear before him, for they said all honour, all excellence, and all perfected manners belonged to Gawain more than to any other living man. Softly each man whispered to his companion, "Now we shall see proper behaviour, and hear noble speech. Without being questioned, we can learn true courtesy today, for we have gained the finest teacher of manners. God has shown us special grace by granting us Sir Gawain. When men rejoice in their lineage and sing with good hearts, this night will show us the true meaning of noble behaviour. Anyone who hears him will learn the art of love-talking." When dinner was finished and evening drew near, the chapel bells rang richly for the solemn evensong of the holy season. The lord went to the service, and the lady also. She entered a beautiful private chapel. Gawain went gladly as well. The lord took him by the sleeve, led him to a seat, and greeted him warmly, saying he was the most welcome man in the world. Gawain thanked him sincerely, and they sat side by side throughout the service. Then the lady desired to look upon the knight. She left her chapel stall with many noble maidens. She was the fairest woman in the world in flesh, figure, and features. Fairer even than Queen Guinevere, Gawain thought. An older lady accompanied her, walking at her left hand. This woman seemed ancient, deeply honoured by the nobles around her. And these two women could not have been more different. If the young one was fresh and bright, the older one was yellow-skinned. The young one was clothed in shining red. The older had rough, wrinkled cheeks. The young woman's breast and bright throat were uncovered and shining whiter than snow on the hills. The older woman's throat was hidden by a thick wimple. Her chin was wrapped in milk-white veils, and her forehead folded in silk. Nothing of her was bare but her black eyebrows, her 2 eyes, her nose, and her lips. and these were sour to see and strangely blurred. Yet she was treated with great respect, for she was a noble lady. Her body was short and thick, and her hips were broad and rounded, quite striking to notice as she walked. When Gawain looked at the lovely young lady, who greeted him graciously, he asked the Lord's permission, and then went toward them. He bowed low to the older woman, and gently took the younger one in his arms. He kissed the young lady courteously, and spoke to her like a knight. They exchanged polite greetings, and Gawain quickly offered to be her servant if it pleased her. Then the two ladies took him between them, walking with him as they talked, and they all went together into a chamber near the fireplace. Spices were brought to them at once, and rich wine again and again. The Lord leapt up often, laughing, urging that more joy be made. He pulled off his hood and hung it on a spear, telling the company that whoever made the most Christmas merriment would win it. "And I," he said, "will try my best to compete with all of you before anyone wins my hood, with help from my friends." So with much cheerful laughter the Lord encouraged lively games to entertain Sir Gawain that night. At last it grew late, and the Lord ordered the lights brought in. Sir Gawain took his leave and went to bed. On the morning of Christmas Day, when all people remember that Christ was born to die for our destiny, joy rose in every home in the world, and so it did in this castle, with many fine dishes served at every meal. The old ancient lady sat in the highest seat. The Lord sat honorably beside her. Gawain sat beside the young lady, right in the middle as the feast began. Throughout the whole hall, each man was served properly according to his rank. There was food, there was laughter, there was great joy. Too much to describe in full, though I try. Gawain and the beautiful lady found great comfort in each other's company. They shared pleasant conversation that was pure and courteous, free of any rudeness. Their gentle talk surpassed any game played by princes. Music echoed through the hall. Trumpets, drums, and pipes. Everyone paid attention to his own happiness, and those two paid attention to each other. Great festivity filled that day, and the next and the third day after that. The joy of St. John's Day was wonderful to hear, and it was the last day of the Christmas celebrations. There were guests preparing to leave on the grey morning that followed, so they stayed up late drinking wine and dancing lively carols. At last, when it grew very late, they each took their leave to travel home. Gawain wished them farewell, and the Lord took his hand, leading him to his own chamber near the fireplace. There the Lord spoke to Gawain privately, thanking him deeply for the honour and delight his visit had brought, for brightening the castle with his cheerful presence. "I swear, sir," said the Lord, "as long as I live, I will consider myself blessed that Gawain has been my guest at God's own feast." "Thank you, sir," said Gawain. "Truly, the honour is yours. May the High King God reward you. I am your servant, and will obey your wishes in all things, high or low, as is only right." The Lord urged the knight to stay longer at his castle, but Gawain answered firmly that he could not by any means. The Lord asked Sir Gawain kindly what secret business had driven him, at such a joyful time, to leave King Arthur's court so suddenly and completely, before the Christmas holidays were even finished. Gawain answered, "Truly, sir, you speak only the truth. A high and urgent mission pulled me away. I was summoned to seek a certain place, though I hardly know where in the world it is, but I must reach it by New Year's morning, or, so help me God, I would not fail for all the land of Logres. So, sir, I beg one thing of you. Tell me honestly if you have ever heard of the Green Chapel, or of the knight who guards it, the one who is green in colour. He and I set an appointment to meet there, if my life lasts that long. But New Year's is nearly here, and I long more than anything, by God's own Son, to find that man, if God allows it. So, with your permission, I must continue my search. I have only 3 days left, and I would rather die than fail in my assignment." The lord laughed and replied, "Then stay. There's no need to hurry. Before the time comes, I will personally show you the way to the Green Chapel. Don't worry about it. You can rest comfortably in your bed until New Year's Day. Then, on the morning of the 1st, you can ride out and reach the place by mid-morning with no trouble at all. Stay here until New Year's Day, rise then and ride. The Green Chapel is not 2 miles away." Gawain was greatly relieved and laughed with joy. "Thank you sincerely," he said. "My luck has turned. I will stay here gladly and do whatever you think best." The lord seated him beside himself and ordered the ladies brought in to entertain him. There was pleasant company and bright talk. The lord himself acted unusually merry, as though he hardly knew what to do with his own excitement. Then he spoke loudly to Gawain. "You have agreed to do what I ask. Will you keep to your promise in this one matter?" "Yes, truly," said Gawain. "As long as I remain in your home, I will obey your command." "You have travelled far," said the lord, "and stayed awake with us, so you must be tired and lacking food and sleep. Tomorrow morning stay in your room and rest until after Mass. Then go to dinner with my wife, who will sit with you and keep you company until I return from court. I will rise early and go out hunting." Gawain agreed to everything and held himself ready like the courteous knight he was. "Now further," said the lord, "let us make a bargain. Whatever I win in the woods shall be yours, and whatever you earn here in the castle shall be mine. Let us trade evenly, whatever happens, for better or worse." "By God," said Gawain, "I agree to that. If this pleases you, I'm happy to play. Who brings us this drink?" The lord said. "The bargain is sealed." They all laughed together. They drank, they joked, and spent time with cheerful play. These lords and ladies enjoyed themselves for as long as they wished. Then, with graceful courtesy and many noble gestures, they stood, talked quietly, kissed each other politely, and took their leave. With many bright torches shining, each person was brought finally to his own bed. Before sleeping, they repeated the covenant again. The exchange of winnings pact. For the old lord of that household knew well how to keep a playful game alive. Before daylight, the people in the castle got up early. The guests who planned to leave called for their servants. They quickly prepared, saddling their horses, tightening their gear, packing up their bags and dressing in their finest clothes. They jumped up lightly into their saddles, took hold of their reins, and each person rode off to whatever place pleased him. The noble lord of the land was not the last to rise. He dressed himself for riding along with many men. He ate a quick bite after hearing Mass, then hurried out to the field with his hunting horn. Before there was any real daylight on the earth, he and his men were already on horseback. The skilled hunters then brought out the hounds. They opened the kennel doors and called the dogs out. They blew 3 clear notes on the hunting horns. The hounds barked loudly and made fierce noise, and the hunters urged them on. 100 hunters, so I have heard, joined the chase. The feuters, the men who handle the greyhounds, went to their stations. More horn blasts rang out in the forest, and the dogs were cast loose. At the first call of the hunt, the wild deer trembled. The does ran into the valleys, terrified, and rushed up the hills, but were quickly turned back by the beaters who shouted loudly. They let the stags and bucks go free, high-headed and proud, for the Lord had forbidden anyone to harm the male deer during that season. But the hinds and does were driven with great noise into the deep hollows. Arrows flew at them as they ran, broad-headed shafts striking their brown hides. The hounds and hunters followed, shouting so loudly it was as if the cliffs were splitting. Any deer that escaped the arrows was soon torn down by the hounds. By the time they were chased uphill and into the waters, the hunters below had been trained well, and the strong greyhounds caught them quickly. The lord of the castle, full of joy, often leapt off his horse to join the excitement. He continued the chase happily until it grew dark. While the lord hunted in the woods, Gawain, the good knight, lay in a fine bed, resting beneath clear curtains. As he lay half dreaming, he heard a small sound at his door. He lifted his head from the covers, raised a corner of the curtain, and carefully looked to see what it might be. It was the lady. The loveliest woman to behold. She came in quietly and closed the door softly behind her. She moved toward the bed, and the knight felt ashamed. So he laid himself down quickly and pretended to sleep. She stepped softly and slipped right to his bedside. She lifted the curtain and slipped inside, then sat gently on the edge of the bed and stayed there a long time, waiting for him to wake. The knight lay still for a long while, wondering in his heart what such a strange visit might mean. But he said to himself that it would be more polite to speak first once he knew her purpose. So he woke, turned toward her, and opened his eyes as though surprised. He blessed himself with hand and speech. The lady looked at him sweetly, her cheeks both white and red, smiling with small lips. Very lovely to see. The lady said, "Good morning, Sir Gawain. You are a careless sleeper to let someone slip in like this. Now I have caught you, and unless we agree otherwise, I shall bind you here in your bed, be sure of that." Laughing brightly, the lady teasingly spoke these playful words. Gawain answered cheerfully, "Good morning, gracious lady. I am at your service, and I'm glad of it. I surrender myself to your mercy, and that, I think, is best, for I truly have no choice." He joked with her lightly and laughed in return. "But, lovely lady," he said, "if you would grant me permission, please release your prisoner and allow him to rise. I would like to get up and dress myself properly, so I may speak with you more comfortably." "Nay, indeed, fair sir," said the lady. "I know better than that. You shall not get out of your bed. I will wrap you in the blankets and talk with my knight whom I have captured. For I know well, truly, that you are Sir Gawain, whom all the world honors wherever you ride. Your courtesy and your noble manners are praised everywhere by lords and ladies and all who live, and now you are here alone with me. My lord and his men are far away in the fields. Others are asleep in their beds, my maidens as well. The door is shut tight with a strong latch, and since I have in this house the man everyone desires, I shall use my time well while it lasts. So hear me. You are welcome to my body. It is yours to choose. I must, out of affection, be your servant." "In good faith," Gawain replied, "you honor me too greatly. I am not the man you speak of so highly. I know well that I am unworthy of such praise, but I would be glad, if God gives you joy, to please you in any way I may, in words or in service, for that would be a true delight." "In truth, Sir Gawain," said the lady, "your praise and your valor, which everyone admires, could scarcely be denied by anyone. There are many ladies who would much rather hold you as I do now, to talk sweetly with you, to find comfort and cool their cares, than own all the gold and precious things they possess. But I thank the Lord above, for I now hold in my hands the one all desire, through God's grace." She treated him with such cheerful sweetness, she being so fair of face, that the knight answered her politely and carefully to everything she said. "Madam," said Gawain kindly, "may Mary bless you. I have truly found you noble and generous. Often I have met others who seemed gracious, but the goodness they gave me was never due to my worth, only to their own kindness." "Surely," the lady replied, "I see the matter differently, for even if I were the best of all women alive and held all the treasure in the world, and if I must choose a lord or lover, then because of the virtues I see in you, your beauty, kindness, and cheerful nature, and all I have heard of you, "There is no man on earth I would choose before you." Gawain answered, "Truly, worthy lady, you choose far better than I deserve. But I am honored by the praise you give me, and humbly I hold myself as your servant and become your knight. May Christ repay you." So they talked of many things until mid-morning passed. The lady acted always as though she loved him dearly, but the knight defended himself with careful courtesy. Though she was the brightest of women, he remembered the blow he must soon face, and thought less of love because of the danger before him. The deadly stroke he must soon receive pressed heavily on his thoughts. At last the lady asked for leave, and he granted it at once. The lady gave him a good day and laughed with a bright glance. As she stood there, she startled him with bold words. "May he who blesses every speech reward you for this pleasant sport. But truly, I doubt you are Gawain. It hardly seems so to me." "Why?" said the knight, suddenly worried lest he had failed in courtesy. But the lady blessed him and said, "For a man as good as Gawain, who is known everywhere for courtesy so flawless and so perfect, surely he would not have stayed so long with a lady like me without asking for a kiss. By his good manners, at the end of some tale, he would have asked for at least a small touch." Then Gawain answered, "As you wish, my lady. I will kiss at your command as a knight ought to do, and for fear of displeasing you, let us not argue further." Immediately the lady came nearer, caught him in her arms, bent sweetly down, and kissed the knight. They commended each other to Christ, and she slipped quietly out the door. Gawain rose and dressed in haste, called his chamberlain, chose his clothes, and when ready went gladly to mass. Afterward he went to his meal, where his hosts treated him with honor. He made merry all day until the moon rose, sitting between the two ladies, the older and the younger, enjoying their company and conversation. Meanwhile the lord of the castle was busy with his sport, hunting through woods and heaths after dry, barren hinds. He killed such a number before the sun leaned westward that it was a wonder to see. At last the hunters gathered together, and quickly they made a great quarry of all the deer they had taken. The best hunters stepped forward with many helpers, collected the thickest of the game, and prepared to break the deer in the proper fashion. They checked the fat, the arse, finding 2 fingers' breadth on the fattest of all. Then they slit the slot and removed the stomach, shaving and trimming cleanly with sharp knives. Next they cut the 4 limbs free and stripped off the hide. They opened the belly, took out the organs, carefully cutting the knot at the base. They separated the gullet from the windpipe and cast out the guts. They cut the shoulders free with their sharp knives, pulling them out through a small opening so the sides remained whole. Then they split the breast in 2, and beginning again at the throat, they sliced quickly downward to where the body narrows. They removed the numbles, the edible entrails, and continued cutting along the ribs down to the haunches, then lifted the entire piece and cut it free. This they named as the numbles, as is proper. By the fork of the thighs they cut the flaps behind, splitting it cleanly in 2 all the way up the backbone. Then they cut off the head and neck, separated the sides from the spine, and threw the raven's fee, the small scraps, into a thicket. They pierced each thick side by the ribs, and hung each portion from the tendons of the thighs, each man receiving his proper share. On the hide of the fine beast they fed the hounds with the liver, lungs, the stomach lining, and bread soaked in blood. The hunters blew "prize," and the hounds bayed loudly. Then they gathered their meat and headed home, striking boldly on their horns. By the time daylight had faded, all the company had returned to the beautiful castle where Gawain waited quietly. With joy and bright fires burning, the lord came in. When Gawain met him, all was goodwill and delight. The lord ordered all his household to gather. The ladies came down with their maidens, and before all the people in the hall he commanded that the venison be brought forward. Cheerfully he called Gawain, and showed him the choice parts of the animals, displaying the shining fat cut cleanly on the ribs. "How do you like this hunt?" said the lord. "Have I won praise today? Have I earned thanks through my skill?" "Indeed, yes," said Gawain. "This is the finest game I have seen in 7 winters." "And all of it I give to you, Gawain," said the lord, "for by our agreement you must claim it as your own." "That is true," said Gawain. "I say the same, and I have earned within these walls what is rightly yours in turn." Then Gawain embraced the lord and kissed him courteously. "Here is my earning," he said. "I achieved nothing more today. I give it to you honestly, even if it is little." "Good," said the lord. "My thanks. It may be better than I guessed, if you will tell me where you got this good fortune, and what it concerned." "That was not part of our agreement," said Gawain. "Ask me no more. You have what is yours. Believe no other." They laughed and made merry, and then went to supper quickly, with new delicacies in abundance. Afterward they sat by the fire. Men along the walls carried wine to them often. As they talked, they reminded each other of the covenant they had made, to exchange whatever each gained when night came again. They reaffirmed their agreement before the whole court. Then drink was brought out in jest and fellowship. At last they took leave of each other, and each went to bed in haste. Before the cock crowed 3 times, the lord leapt out of bed, along with all his men. Mass was said, breakfast quickly taken, and before dawn they rode into the woods to chase the game. Through plains and thorns they passed, unleashing the hounds that raced at full speed. Soon the hunters called out a scent in a field. They shouted encouragement to the hounds as the first one caught the smell. Wild cries broke out. The hounds that heard rushed forward at once, 40 together on the trail. A roaring chorus of baying dogs arose, echoing off the rocks around them. The hunters urged them on with horns and with voices. All the hunters gathered into a single company between a marsh in the woods and a steep, craggy cliff. They circled a knotted thicket, for they knew the beast was inside from how strongly the bloodhounds marked it. Then they beat the bushes and forced the animal upward. Out burst the fiercest boar, a monstrous old male long separated from the sounder. He was the strongest and greatest of all boars. Whenever he grunted, he struck fear into many. At his first charge, he threw 3 men to the ground and sped forward unharmed. The hunters shouted, "Hey, hey!" and set horns to their mouths, blowing the rally call with force. Many cheerful voices, men and hounds, joined in pursuit, running after the boar with boast and noise, eager to kill him. Often he stood his ground to face the hounds baying around him. He slashed at them fiercely, injuring many. The hounds howled and screamed piteously. The bowmen stepped forward to shoot at the wild swine. They drew their arrows and shot at him again and again. But the points could not pierce the thick hide that shielded him, and the barbs would not bite. Though the shafts splintered in pieces, the arrowheads simply bounded back wherever they struck. But when the blows of their hard strokes hurt him, then, mad with fury, he rushed at the hunters, striking and injuring them fiercely as he charged. Many lost courage and drew back, but the lord spurred his light horse after the boar. Boldly on the field he put his bugle to his mouth and blew the hunting calls. He rode through thorny thickets in pursuit, chasing the wild swine until the sun slanted westward. Thus all day they continued this sport, while our noble knight lay in bed at home. Gawain, richly dressed in splendid garments. The lady did not forget him. Early she came to greet him and to stir and lighten his mood. She came to the curtain and peered at the knight. Sir Gawain welcomed her courteously at once, and she returned his greeting warmly. Softly she sat beside him, and with a lovely look, spoke these words: "Sir, if you truly are Gawain, I marvel greatly. You are a man so devoted to goodness, yet you cannot grasp the simple rules of companionship. If someone teaches you, you forget it immediately. You have already forgotten the true lesson I taught you yesterday, the truest token of conversation I could give." "What was that?" said the knight. "Indeed, I know not. If it is true, the fault is mine." "I taught you about kissing," said the fair lady, "that wherever courtesy is known, a knight must quickly claim a kiss. It becomes every knight who practices courtesy." "Ah, no, dear lady," said Gawain, "that speech will not do. I dare not take what might be forbidden. If I were refused, I would be at fault if I presumed to offer a kiss unasked." "In faith," said the gracious lady, "you could not be refused. You are strong enough to take one by force if you chose, if any were so rude as to deny you." "By God," said Gawain, "your words are kind, but threats do no good where I dwell. Every gift given without free will is worthless. I am at your command to kiss when you desire. You may take when you wish and leave off when you please." Then the lady bent down and kissed him sweetly. They talked together much there, of love's grief and love's grace. "I would know something from you, sir," she said, "and hope you are not offended. You are young, lively, courteous, and knightly, famous in all chivalry, and the highest thing in chivalry is the loyal sport of love, the lore of true affection. Every story of noble knights tells how they risk their lives for their true loves, how they endure sorrow for them, and by their valor win joy again. And you are the comeliest knight alive. Your reputation travels everywhere. Yet I have sat with you twice now, and never heard from your lips a single word of love, not even a little. You, of all men, should teach a young woman something of love's craft. Why are you so ignorant, who are master of every other praise? Or do you think me dull, unworthy to hear your courtly speech? I have come here alone, and sit with you to learn. Teach me your skill while my lord is from home." "In good faith," said Gawain, "God reward you. Great is the pleasure and joy to me that one so worthy would come to me, and entertain herself with so humble a man. To accept such honor brings me comfort. But for me to presume to teach the arts of love or to expound tales of chivalry, to you, who know far more of that art than I ever shall, that would be foolish indeed. Yet I would gladly fulfill your desire as best I may, for I am bound to serve you and always will be your faithful servant. May Christ save me." Thus the lady questioned him often to see if she might win him to some fault, whatever else she intended. But he defended himself so nobly that no wrong appeared. On neither side did they know anything but gladness. They laughed and played for a long time. At last she kissed him and courteously took her leave, going away quietly. Then the knight rises and goes to hear mass, and afterward their dinner is prepared and nobly served. Sir Gawain spends the day in pleasant company with the ladies, but the lord of the castle rides constantly across the lands pursuing the savage boar. The same boar that tore apart the backs of his best hounds, ripping them completely asunder. The beast held his stand at the bay until the bowmen were forced to break his position and drive him, much against his will, from his lair. Arrows flew thickly when the hunters gathered in, but even the boldest of them he caused to fall back at times, for he startled the bravest with sudden fierce charges. At last the boar grew so weary he could run no more. He made what haste he could to gain a hole, a cleft in a rock beside a rushing stream. He placed his back against the bank and began scraping fiercely. The foam frothed from his mouth in ugly white clots, and he whetted his white tusks. All the bold men standing by him were troubled and afraid. None dared approach him, for he had hurt so many before that all believed they would be torn again and suffer worse wounds from his brutal, maddened tusks. At last the lord himself came, guiding his horse forward. He saw the boar at bay with the men around him. He dismounted lightly, left his charger, drew forth a bright sword, and strode boldly across the ford to where the fierce beast waited. The wild boar, seeing a man with weapon drawn, raised his bristles and snorted so fiercely that many feared for the man's life. The boar rushed at him straight on, so that boar and man together came crashing in a heap in the swiftest part of the stream. And the worst of the encounter fell upon the boar, for the man aimed his stroke well as they first met. He set the sharp blade firmly into the boar's throat slot, driving it up to the hilt so that the heart split in two. The boar gave a groan and fell down into the water at once. 100 hounds seized him then and bit him savagely. Men dragged him to the bank, and dogs brought him to death. Then there was blowing of the prize call on many loud horns, and high hallooing from all the hunters. The hounds bayed the dead beast as their masters commanded, those masters being the chief huntsmen of the chase. Then a man skilled in woodcraft began to break up the boar. First he hewed off the head and set it high, then he cut the boar open roughly along the spine. He drew out the bowels, burned them upon the coals, and mixed them with bread to reward his hounds. Next he carved out the brawn in broad, shining slices and took off the hastlets, the choice inner parts, as was proper. Then he bound the two halves together whole and hung them stoutly on a strong pole. With this great boar they all turned homeward. The boar's head was carried before the Lord himself, the same Lord who had braved him in the ford by the strength of his own hand. The Lord longed to see Sir Gawain in the hall. He called for him, and Gawain gladly came to receive his share of the spoils. The Lord laughed loudly and merrily when he saw Sir Gawain. He spoke to him joyfully. The good ladies were summoned, and the household gathered. He showed them the shields of the boar, and described for them the tail, its great size, its length, and the width of the monstrous beast that had fled through the woods. The other knight, Gawain, courteously commended him and praised the hunt as a great achievement for such a brawn of a beast as he had never seen. Never before, he said, had he set eyes on the sides of such a swine. Then they handled the huge head. Gawain praised it, and the Lord waited for his reaction. "Now, Gawain," said the good man, "this game is yours, by firm and faithful covenant, as you know." "That is true," said Gawain, "and as surely I return to you all I have won today, by my troth." So he embraced the Lord around the neck and courteously kissed him, and then gave him a second kiss, serving him the whole of what he had gained. "Now we are even," said the Lord, "this very evening, for all the covenants we made since you came hither by law." And the Lord said, "By St. Giles, you are the best man I know. You gain riches quickly when such bargains you draw." Then they set up tables on trestles, spread cloths upon them, and torches along the walls were lit. Men were seated and served throughout the hall. Much noise and merriment rose there, around the fire on the floor, and in many kinds of lively ways. At supper and afterward they sang noble songs, Christmas melodies and new carols, with all the mannerly mirth that anyone could tell of. And always our lovely knight sat by the lady. She made such graceful gestures toward him, with secret stolen glances to please that noble knight, that he was wholly astonished, and somewhat troubled in mind. But for courtesy's sake, he would not act coldly toward her. He behaved with all gentleness, however strange the situation felt. When they had played and talked in the hall as long as they pleased, she led him to his chamber, and they went to the fireside. There they drank, played, and discussed again how they would keep the same agreement on New Year's Eve. But the knight, Gawain, asked leave to depart in the morning, for the time of his meeting was drawing near. But the Lord kept him from leaving, saying, "As I am a true man, I pledge my word. You shall reach the Green Chapel to keep your appointment on New Year's morn, long before prime. So stay in your chamber, rest yourself, and I shall hunt in the woods. We will again exchange whatever we win when I return, for I have tested you twice and found you faithful. Now the third trial will be the best. Think on it in the morning. Let us be merry while we can, and remember joy, for sorrow may come whenever it pleases." Gawain agreed to remain. They brought drinks right away, and then everyone went to bed, led by torchlight. Sir Gawain lay down and slept very still and quietly all night. But early in the morning, the lord, who kept his daily habits, was already awake and dressed. After Mass, a small meal was taken by the lord and his men. The morning was merry, and he called for his horse. All the knights who were to ride after him were mounted and prepared at the hall gates. The ground was marvellously fair, cleansed with frost, the red sun rising through drifting mist, shining bright and clearing the clouds of the sky. The hunters spread themselves along a woodside. The hornblowers rang the air with their calls. Some came upon the footprints of a fox, trailing the tricky creature by the winding of its cunning tracks. A small hound cried upon the scent. The huntsman called encouragement. His fellows hurried to him, sniffing thick and fast. They ran in a cluster, following the fox's proper course. They soon caught sight of the animal and pursued him hard, growling fiercely at him with furious noise. He darted and twisted through many a rough grove, ducking under hedges often. At last, by a small ditch, he leapt over a thorn spine, slipped quietly by a path in the brush, seeking to escape the hounds by cunning. But before he knew it, he reached a hunting station, where 3 fierce hounds sprang at him at once, all grey-coloured. He dodged them quickly and started away again, with all the misery of life, back toward the woods. Then it was joy to listen to the baying of the hounds when the whole pack had gathered and mixed together. Such a sorrowful noise they set on his head that it sounded as if all the cliffs had clattered and crashed together. Here he was hallowed at when knights met him. Loudly he was cursed with growling speech. There he was threatened and called thief repeatedly, and always the hounds behind his tail, so he could not rest. Often he was nearly caught when he bolted outward, and often he circled back again. For the fox was wily, and indeed he led them astray long, over hills, under thickets, while the courteous knight at home, Sir Gawain, slept soundly within his comely curtains on the cold morning. But the lady, loving him, let herself not sleep, nor weaken her purpose set firmly in her heart. She rose quickly, and made her way to him in a rich mantle down to the ground, lined with the finest fur. She wore no ornaments on her head, but beautiful stones braided among her hair, 20 in clusters. Her throat and her bosom were all bare, both before and behind. She came to Gawain's chamber door, closed it after her, opened a window, and called to him, "A man! How can you sleep? This morning is so clear." He was deep in drowsing dreams, but then he heard her. Sir Gawain was dreaming about his coming adventure at the Green Chapel. How destiny that day would appoint his fate when he met the Green Knight and must abide his blow without resistance. But when he recovered his senses and swung out of the dream with a start, the lovely lady came laughing sweetly. She bent over his fair face and gently kissed him. He welcomed her worthily with noble cheer. He saw her so glorious, so splendidly arrayed, so faultless in her form and her fine hues, that swift, surging joy warmed his heart. With smooth smiles and quiet looks, they slipped into mirth. All bliss and good fortune between them, but great peril stood there too, if more of her knight she could win. The Prince of Renown, Sir Gawain, was pressed so closely and urged so near the limit that he must either accept her love or very rudely refuse it. He worried for his courtesy, lest he seem a churl, and more for his soul's welfare, should he commit sin and become a traitor to the lord who owned the house. "God forbid," said the knight, "that such a thing should happen." With gentle laughter, he turned aside every special speech that sprang from her mouth. Then the lady said to the knight, You deserve blame if you do not love the lady who lies so near you. Before all the men in the world, my heart is wounded, unless you have some mistress, a lady you love better, and to whom you have pledged your faith so firmly that you won't loosen it. And I could believe that. Tell me truly, I pray you, for all loves alive, do not hide the truth. Do not deceive me. Sir Gawain swore by St. John and smiled a little. In truth, I had no lady at all, and I would have none for a while. That was the worst thing you could have said, the lady said. But I must believe you, even though it made me sad. She sighed, leaned close, and kissed him gently. Kiss me now, she said, and I will go. I can only stay here and grieve, like one who loves deeply. She kissed him again, then stepped back and said, Now, dear sir, before I leave, do me this favor. Give me something of yours, even a glove, so I can remember you and ease my sorrow. Truly, said Gawain, I wish I had something here, the thing I loved most, to give you. You deserved far more than I could give. But to give you a poor love gift would not honor you. It would not be right for a lady like you to take only a glove from me. I was on a journey in a strange land. I had no men with me and no treasure to give. That troubled me, lady, because I wanted to honor you. Each man must give what he can, no more, no less. No, said the lady softly. Noble knight, even if I had nothing of yours, still you should take something of mine. She offered him a rich ring of red gold work, with a shining stone set aloft, flashing bright as the sun. Its value, indeed, was very great, but the knight refused it, saying, I will take no gifts, my dear, not at this time. I have none to give you in return, so I will take none. She urged it strongly. He firmly refused, swearing he would not take it, and she was sorrowful that he would not accept it. If you refuse my ring, because it seems too rich, and you do not wish to be so highly beholden to me, then I shall give you my girdle, which is less worthy. She loosened a lace that encircled her sides, tied around her gown beneath her bright mantle, woven of green silk and shaped with gold, braided all around with delicate fingerwork. She offered it to the knight, and gladly begged him to take it, though unworthy. But again he refused. He would take neither gold nor treasure until God granted him grace to achieve the adventure he had chosen. Therefore, I pray you, be not displeased and cease your urging, for I never sought this from you. I am deeply beholden to you for your gracious conduct, and ever in heat or cold I will be your true servant. Do you refuse this silk? Said the lady. Because it is simple, for it is plain in itself, and so it seems. Look, small and of little worth. But whoever knew the powers woven into it would perhaps prize it far more. For whatever man is girded with this green lace, while he has it fastened properly about him, there is no man under heaven who could wound him. He could not be slain by any earthly blow. Then the knight considered, and it came into his heart that such a jewel would serve him well for the great peril assigned to him, when he must go to the green chapel and receive his check, his blow. If he might escape unslain, the trick would be noble indeed. Then she pressed him hard with her speech and urged him to take the belt. And at last he consented, and she gave it to him gladly. She begged him, for her sake, never to reveal it, but faithfully to conceal it from her lord. The knight agreed that no one should know of it but the two of them. He thanked her many times, with earnest heart and thought. By that time she had kissed the knight thrice. Then the lady took her leave and left him there, for she could win no more mirth from that man. When she had gone, Sir Gawain quickly dressed, rose, and arrayed himself nobly. He folded up the love-lace the lady had given him and hid it very carefully where he could find it again. Then he went swiftly to the chapel, privately approached a priest, and prayed him earnestly to teach him how his soul might be saved when he must depart hence. There he confessed plainly, declaring his misdeeds, greater and lesser, and begged for mercy. He asked for absolution, and the priest absolved him fully, setting him clean, as though Judgment Day were ready to dawn on the next morning. Then he made himself as merry among the noble ladies, with graceful singing and every kind of joy, as he had never done before, until dark night came. Every man there found pleasure in him, and said truly, "Never was he so merry before, since first he came here." While he lingered there in delight, love having come to him, the Lord was still out in the fields leading his huntsmen. He had at last overtaken the fox he had followed so long. As the fox sprang over a hedge to escape, the Lord heard the hounds speeding toward him. The fox came rushing through a rough grove with all the pack close behind him. The Lord perceived the wild creature and waited craftily. He drew out his shining sword and cast at the beast, but the fox darted aside, about to spring, when a hound leaped upon him just before he could escape. The hounds fell all over him and tore the cunning creature with fierce noise. The Lord dismounted quickly, seized Reynard at once, and pulled him from the hounds' mouths. He held the fox high above his head and cried aloud. Many bold hounds bayed at him. The hunters hurried to him, horns blowing in number, each hunter re-challenging in turn until they saw the Lord himself. Soon his noble company arrived. All who carried bugles blew them together, and all the others hallooed who had no horns. It was the merriest meet that men ever heard. The great noise raised for the fox's soul. They rewarded the hounds, stroking their heads. Then they took the fox and turned off his coat, skinned him. The hunters hurried home, because night was coming on. They blew strongly on their horns as they rode. At last the Lord reached his beloved home. Inside, he found a warm fire on the floor, and Sir Gawain sitting happily beside it, enjoying himself among the ladies. Gawain wore a blue robe that reached the ground, a soft furred surcoat, and a hood of the same material hanging from his shoulder. Both robe and hood were trimmed with fine fur. Gawain came forward across the room to greet the Lord cheerfully. He said, "Now I must complete the agreement we made, the one we spoke of when no drink was spared." Then Gawain hugged the Lord and kissed him 3 times, just as carefully and sincerely as he could. The Lord laughed and said, "By Christ, you've had great luck today. If your part of our bargain went this well, you must have had a fine trade." Gawain answered, "Don't worry about the trade. You have fully paid what you owed." The Lord replied, "Well, mine is poor, for I hunted all day and got nothing except this ugly fox skin. It's a poor reward to offer in return for such fine gifts as the 3 kisses you've given me." Gawain said, "It's enough. I thank you by the cross." And he told how the fox was killed. They celebrated with music, food, and laughter. The ladies joked, and the men made merry. Gawain and the Lord enjoyed themselves greatly. If anyone had not enjoyed it, he must have been foolish or drunk, for everyone joked and laughed until the time came to separate. At last they all had to go to bed. Gawain politely took leave of the Lord first and thanked him for the wonderful stay he had enjoyed. He said, "May the High King of Heaven reward you for such a marvelous visit during this great feast. If you will accept me as one of your friends, I will be honored. But I must leave tomorrow, as you know." He asked the Lord to give him a guide to show him the way to the Green Chapel, so he might meet his fate there on New Year's Day. The Lord answered, "In good faith, gladly. Everything I promised, I will keep." He assigned a servant to guide Gawain along the downs, so he would have no trouble riding through the forest by the quickest route. Gawain thanked the Lord warmly, and then went to take leave of the ladies. With sadness and gentle kisses, he said goodbye to them. He thanked them sincerely for all their help, and they answered just as warmly and commended him to Christ with quiet sighs. He then said farewell to the rest of the household. He thanked every person he met for their service, kindness, and all the work they had done to care for him. They were all sorrowful to see him go, for they had come to love him dearly. He was then led to his chamber with lights and attendants and brought to his bed. Whether he slept well, the poet says he cannot tell, for Gawain had much on his mind. The next day would be his great trial. Let him lie there quietly, the poet says. If you will be patient, I shall tell you next what the others did. The new year came near, and the night passed. Daylight quickly faded, just as God willed. Outside, wild winter weather woke up fiercely. Cold clouds threw icy wind against the ground, and sharp blasts from the north stung anyone caught outside. Snow fell hard and fast. The swirling wind roared overhead and filled every valley with deep drifts. Gawain lay in bed listening. Even with his eyes closed, he slept very little. He heard every rooster that crowed, and knew exactly what time it was. He got up quickly before dawn, for a lamp was still burning in his room. He called to his chamberlain, who answered at once, and told him to bring his armor and saddle his horse. The servant hurried off and brought Gawain's clothes, arming him carefully. First, Gawain put on warm clothing against the cold, then his armor, which had been well cared for. They scrubbed the rust from his bright mail shirt until it shone like new. Each piece was polished clean. Then the knight ordered his horse to be brought. The finest horse in all the land. As Gawain dressed in his splendid clothing, with its bright symbols and beautiful embroidery, trimmed inside with fine fur, he did not forget the green lace the lady had given him. After he had strapped on his sword, he wrapped the lace twice around his waist. He tied the green silk belt snugly around his body. It looked handsome against his rich red garments, but Gawain did not wear the lace for its beauty. He wore it so it might save his life when he had to face suffering at the Green Chapel. He hoped it would protect him from a sword or a knife when the time came. Once he was fully armed, he stepped out quickly and thanked all the household servants for their help and kindness. Then Gawain's horse, Gringolet, was brought out. He was huge, powerful, and well-rested, eager to run. Gawain went to him and looked into his face. He spoke quietly and honestly. There is no group of people anywhere more noble or more honorable than those in this hall. May joy come to them, and may God bless the gracious lady as well. If they welcome a guest out of charity and treat him with honor, may the Lord of heaven reward them. And if I live long enough, I hope one day I can repay them. Gawain stepped into the stirrup and mounted high. A servant handed him his shield, and Gawain urged Gringolet forward with his golden spurs. The horse sprang across the stones. Gawain waited no longer. He said, "I commend this castle to Christ. May he give it good fortune always." The bridge was lowered, and the wide gates were unbarred and opened on both sides. Gawain crossed the bridge, blessed the people, and rode out. The porter knelt before him, and Gawain wished him God's blessing and a good day. Gawain then went on his way with the guide who was supposed to show him the way to that terrible place where he was to receive his deadly blow. They rode along hillsides where the branches were bare. They climbed up cliffs where the cold clung to the rock. The sky rose high above them, but underneath it the weather was ugly and dark. Fog rolled over the moors and melted on the mountains. Every hill had a hat of mist upon it, and icy streams splashed down the slopes, shattering loudly on the rocks. It was a miserable road through the woods, until at last the sun rose. They reached a very high hill, snow shining white all around. Then the guide who rode beside Gawain asked him to stop. "Sir," he said, "I have brought you here, and now you are very close to the place you have been searching for. But since I know you and respect you deeply, I want to tell you the truth, and I hope you'll follow my advice. The place you are riding toward is considered extremely dangerous. A man lives in that wild land who is the worst on earth. He is strong, cruel, and loves to strike blows. His body is bigger than the best 4 knights in King Arthur's household. He keeps the Green Chapel, and no one rides past that place, no matter how proud or well-armed, without being beaten to death by a single blow from his hand. He has no mercy. Whether a common man or a priest, a monk or anyone else, he kills them all the same. To him, killing others is as pleasant as walking himself. So hear me clearly. If you go there, you will be killed. Believe me, it wouldn't matter if you had 20 lives to spend. He has lived there a long time and has caused endless trouble. You cannot defend yourself against his fierce blows. So, good Sir Gawain, the guide continued, leave this man alone. Turn back and go another way. Travel by some other road, and may God guide you. I will hurry back home and promise you faithfully, by God and by all his saints, that I will never tell anyone that you even thought of fleeing from any man. Gawain answered, Thank you. May good fortune come to you for wanting to help me and for offering to keep my honor safe. But even if you swore to keep it secret, if I turned back and ran away out of fear, just as you described, I would be a cowardly knight. There would be no excuse for me. So I will go to the Green Chapel, let whatever happens happen, and speak with the man I've been seeking. Whether the outcome is good or bad, as fate decides. Even if he is a fierce and rough man, I will still go. God knows how to shape events and save his servants when he chooses. Mary help you, said the guide. If you insist on talking this way, and you truly want to risk your own death, then I will not try to stop you. Put your helmet on your head, hold your spear in your hand, and ride down that narrow path beside the rock. Ride until you reach the bottom of the steep valley. Then look a little to the left. There you will see the chapel itself, and the big, fierce man who guards it. Now farewell, on God's behalf, noble Gawain. For all the gold in the world I would not go with you, nor walk with you through this wild forest any farther. With those words the guide turned his horse, hit its sides with his heels, leaped over the clearing, and left Gawain all alone. Gawain said, By God himself, I will neither cry nor complain. I am ready for whatever God wants for me. He urged Gringolet forward and followed the narrow path, riding beside a sloping bank. He travelled through the rough valley, looking in every direction. But he saw no sign of any chapel. Only tall, steep hills on both sides, knotted roots, twisted rocks, and sharp stone ridges that seemed to threaten him. He paused and held back his horse, changing direction again and again as he searched for the chapel. Still, he saw nothing. At last he noticed a small, low hill beside a stream. The water bubbled as if boiling. Gawain rode toward the hill, got down from his horse and tied Gringolet's reins to a branch of a tree. He walked around the hill, wondering what it could be. At one end he found a hollow opening, overgrown with grass. Inside was nothing but a dark, old cave, a crack in an ancient rock. Well now, said the knight, could this be the Green Chapel? A place like this seems fit only for saying prayers to the devil. If this is where I have to be at midnight, then here I will say my prayers. Indeed, Gawain said, this is a lonely, haunted place. This shrine is ugly and overgrown. It seems perfect for a man wrapped in green clothing to do his devilish devotions. Yes, I feel now in all my senses that the fiend himself has lured me here. This must be a cursed chapel, the worst I have ever entered. He climbed toward the rocky plateau, helmet on his head, spear in hand. Suddenly he heard a loud noise coming from beyond the stream on the far bank. It clattered against the cliff as if someone were sharpening a scythe on a huge grindstone. It whirred like a mill wheel, rushed, scraped, and rang sharply. It was terrible to hear. "By God," said Gawain, "that sound must be meant as preparation to meet me. Let God do as he wills. Even if I lose my life, I won't be frightened by any noise." Then Gawain called out loudly, "Whoever lives here, come speak with me. Good Gawain has arrived in the right place. If anyone wants to meet me, come quickly, now or never, if you want your business finished." Suddenly a voice answered from the bank above him. "Stay where you are, and you will get exactly what I promised." The noise continued scraping and grinding for a moment, and then someone stepped out from behind a crag. A figure came from a hole in the rocks, whirling a deadly weapon. A massive Danish axe, newly sharpened, its blade huge and polished bright. It was the Green Knight, dressed exactly as before. Same face, same legs, same long green hair and beard. Except now one foot stood firmly on the ground. He set the axe head on a stone and walked forward. Reaching the stream, he would not wade through. Instead, he hopped across, using his axe as a staff, and strode boldly over the snowy ground. Sir Gawain walked to meet him. The Green Knight did not bow. "Now, sir," the Green Knight said, "at least you keep your word." "God keep you, Gawain," the Green Knight said. "You are truly welcome here. You have arrived exactly on time, just as an honest knight should. You remember the agreement we made. A year ago today you struck me, and this new year I must return the blow. We are here alone in this valley. No one can help either of us. So take off your helmet and take your blow at once. Do not argue, just as you ordered me when you cut off my head in King Arthur's hall." "By God," said Gawain, "who gives me life, I will not complain about whatever happens. Swing your stroke as you wish. I will stand still and offer no resistance." He bent his neck, showed the bare skin, and acted as though he had no fear at all. The Green Knight prepared himself quickly. He gathered up his grim axe and lifted it with all his strength, as if he meant to kill Gawain in one blow. Had he struck as hard as he intended, even the bravest man would have died. But as the blade came sliding downward, Gawain flinched a little, pulling up his shoulders from the sharp iron. The Green Knight stopped the blow and scolded him. "You are not Gawain, the knight everyone praises, who never feared anything in hill or valley. Yet now you flinch from fear before you have even been touched. I never flinched when you struck me. My head fell to my feet, but I didn't move or run. But you, before you've felt even a scratch, you're scared in your heart. So maybe I should be called the braver man." Gawain answered, "I flinched once, but I will not again. Even if my head falls on these stones, I cannot put it back on." "Come on then," Gawain said. "By your honor, bring me to the point. Give me my fate and get it over with. I will stand still for your strike and won't move again until your axe has hit me. I swear it." "Fine then, have at you," said the Green Knight. He lifted the axe high, acted as fierce as a madman, and aimed a mighty blow. But he stopped the axe suddenly, holding it back before it touched Gawain. Gawain stayed perfectly still, never flinching, standing as firm as a rock rooted in the ground. Then the Green Knight said cheerfully, "Now you've shown your heart is steady. Now I must truly strike you. Hold up your head, the way King Arthur knighted you. Let's see if you can keep your courage for this final test." Gawain answered angrily, "Swing your blow, fierce man! You threaten too long! I hope your heart isn't scared of your own strike." "For real," the Green Knight replied. "You speak so boldly that I won't delay your business any longer." He prepared himself to strike, frowning with his lips and his brow. It was no surprise that he looked unhappy. He expected no rescue from this moment. He lifted the axe lightly and let it fall cleanly on Gawain's bare neck. Though he struck firmly, he did not harm him deeply. only cut the skin on one side. The sharp blade sliced the flesh through the smooth surface of his neck, and bright blood ran down Gawain's shoulder onto the snow. When Gawain saw the blood glaring red on the white ground, he jumped back more than the length of a spear. He grabbed his helmet and threw it onto his head, swung his shield beneath his shoulder, and drew out his bright sword. He was happier at that moment than ever since he was born. "Stop your blow, man," he said. "No more of that. I have taken the stroke I was promised, but if you strike me again, I will repay you instantly. I swear it. I have taken the one stroke we agreed upon. That was the deal made in Arthur's hall, and therefore, stop now!" The Green Knight stepped back, rested on his axe, and looked at Gawain standing there bold and fearless in his armor. He liked the sight. Then he spoke loudly and cheerfully. "Brave knight, don't be so angry. No one here has mistreated you. Everything has been done exactly according to our agreement in King Arthur's court. I promised you a blow, and you have received it. Be satisfied. I release you from any further strikes. If I had wanted to harm you, I could have hit you much worse. Here are the reasons. The first swing I made at you, where I did not touch you, was for the first night, when you honored our bargain faithfully and gave me everything you had gained. The second swing, also missing you, was for the second night, when you kissed my wife and returned the kisses to me honestly. Those 2 faithful returns earned you 2 harmless swings, but the third blow, the one that cut you, is because you failed on the 3rd day. He means the green girdle you hid. So that cut is your payment for breaking the agreement. That belt you're wearing," said the Green Knight, "is mine, my own clothing. My wife wove that very girdle. I know all about the kisses you gave and the way my wife tried to tempt you. I arranged all of that myself. I sent her to test you, and honestly, I believe you are the most faultless knight who ever walked on earth. As a pearl outshines a plain white pea, so Gawain, by my faith, outshines other fine knights. But still, you failed a little bit. You lacked perfect loyalty. Yet it wasn't because of wickedness or because you wanted my wife, but because you loved your own life. For that reason, I blame you less." Gawain stood still a long while, deeply upset. Anger and shame burned inside him, and blood rushed into his face until he shrank for sheer embarrassment at what the knight had said. The first words he could get out were, "Cursed be cowardice and greed, both of them. They bring shame and destroy virtue. Here, take it." He pulled at the knot, tore the girdle loose, and threw it back to the Green Knight. "Look, here is the false thing. May it fall to ruin. Because of fear for my neck, cowardice taught me to covet, making me abandon my true nature, which should be generosity and loyalty, the virtues of good knights. Now I am guilty, false, and always fearful, guilty of treachery and untruth. This brings sorrow and pain. I admit all my faults to you here. Let me accept your judgment, and I will be wiser from now on." The Green Knight laughed kindly and said, "I consider the harm I gave you to be fully repaid now. You have confessed your faults openly and taken the penance of the edge of my blade. So I consider you polished clean, as pure as if you had never sinned since the day you were born. And I give you back the girdle, sir, the one trimmed with gold. It's green like my clothing. Let it remind you whenever you appear among great princes of what happened here at the Green Chapel. Let it be a true token of this adventure. Come again to my home this new year, and we will celebrate the rest of the great feast together." The Lord laughed hard and said, "With my wife, I believe, we will make peace with you, though she was once your fierce enemy." "No," said Gawain, removing his helmet politely and thanking the knight. "I have stayed here under sadness, but may happiness come to you, and may God reward you who gives all honor. Give my greetings to your courteous wife, and to the other lady as well, both my honored ladies, who cleverly tricked their knight with their tests and games. But it is no wonder if a foolish man is tricked by the tricks of women and brought to grief. For Adam was tricked by one woman, and Solomon by many, and Samson soon after. Delilah caused his downfall, and David later was deceived by Bathsheba, and suffered for it. These great men were the finest under heaven, the best of those who lived before us, and yet they were all misled by the women they knew, to love them well and still not believe them. That would be a miracle for any man. So though I was tricked today, I think I should be excused. But your girdle, said Gawain, may God reward you for it. I will wear it gladly, not for its gold, or its pretty silk, or its long rich tassels, nor for honor or wealth or beautiful workmanship. I will wear it as a sign of my failure. When I ride with honor among men, I will look at this girdle and remind myself of the weakness of my sinful flesh, how easily it is tempted. So whenever pride tries to rise up in me because of my skill in battle, looking at this Lovelace will humble my heart. But I ask one more thing. Do not be displeased. Since you are the lord of the land where I have stayed with such honor, may the God who made heaven reward you. Tell me your true name, and I will trouble you no more. The Green Knight replied, I will tell you truthfully. In this land I am called Bernlac de Haute Desert, through the power of Morgan le Fay, who lives in my house. She learned many magical arts. She was the student of the great wizard Merlin, who knows all about the knights of your land. Morgan the goddess, that is why she has her name, can tame even the proudest men alive. She sent me to your famous court to test the pride of the Round Table, to see if the stories of your greatness were true. She planned this strange adventure to shake your senses, to frighten Queen Guinevere and even cause her death from fear. When I appeared in the hall holding my own head, it was she, the old lady in my home. She is your own aunt, King Arthur's half-sister, daughter of the Duchess of Tintagel and later beloved by Uther, Arthur's father. So I beg you, come visit her, make merry in my hall. My household loves you, and I, by my faith, would honor you more than any man alive for your great loyalty. But Gawain refused. He would not return with the Green Knight. They embraced and kissed, commended each other to the Prince of Heaven, and parted on that cold ground. Gawain mounted his fair horse, turned boldly toward Arthur's castle, and the Green Knight rode away wherever he wished. Gawain rode rough, wild roads on his horse Gringolet, who had saved his life. Sometimes he found shelter in houses, sometimes he slept outdoors. He survived many adventures that I cannot tell now. The wound in his neck healed, but he always wore the shining green belt, slung across his body like a sash, tied beneath his left arm, as a reminder of his fault. At last he returned to Arthur's court, whole and unharmed. Great joy rose in the hall when they heard that noble Gawain had come home. The king kissed him, and many noble knights embraced him warmly. They questioned him eagerly about his journey, and he told them all: the events at the chapel, the behavior of the Green Knight, the lady's temptations, and finally, the green lace. He showed them the cut in his neck, the wound he had received because he failed in perfect loyalty. He groaned with shame as he spoke, and blood flushed his face. "Look, my lord," said Gawain, handling the girdle. "This is the band of blame around my neck. This is the sign of the disgrace I earned, the cowardice and greed that I showed. This is the symbol of my untruth, and I must wear it as long as I live, for no man can hide his harm. Once guilt is attached, it will never fully part from him." But the king comforted him, and all the court laughed kindly and agreed together that every knight of the Round Table would wear a bright green belt for Gawain's sake. A sign of fellowship and honor. Thus the green sash became famous in the renown of the Round Table, and Gawain honored it forever afterward. So this adventure happened in Arthur's days, as the old books of Britain testify. Since bold Brutus came to these shores after the fall of Troy, many such wonders have happened, before this and after. May the one who wore the crown of thorns bring us to his eternal joy. Amen.